Hey, welcome to the Most Important Game podcast. I'm Paul Monahan, and my mission is to help you lead, play, and perform at your best. As you know, on this podcast, I try and bring in guests from a lot of different domains to help us understand the dynamics that help us perform at our best when it means the most. All right, on today's episode, we talked to Mike Cameron. Mike Cameron is a brilliant guy. He happens to be my publisher. He published my book, The Most Important Game. He also published this book. He wrote it. This is called Becoming a Better Man. When something's got to change, maybe it's you. And this is Mike's story and lessons learned through tons of success, tons of setbacks, some really difficult setbacks and challenges, and like doing hard things and how to overcome, and how he became a better person and a better man. Mike works today with men in Canada on kind of men's health, men's mental health issues and or dynamics. And he's doing some amazing work. Super interesting guy. And we're going to talk to him right now. Here we go. All right. Here with Mike Cameron. Mike, great to see you up in the Great White North, I believe.
I am. I'm kind of in the southern part of the Great White North, but yes, I am up in Canada. I'm in Canmore, Alberta, in the beautiful Rockies.
Yeah, it's funny, the southern part of the Great White North. I talked to some friends the other day. They're going fishing, and I can't even remember where. We looked it up on the map they showed me. I'm like, it is so far. It's like Arctic Circle. Like
Right.
Canada is so far north. You know, like Canada is so massive, right?
Yeah, it really is. It really is.
So in the Canadian Rockies, coming to us live, love to jump into the Mike Cameron story. So glad we got a chance to do this. I've wanted to do this for a long time, and I want to start with this question really around this idea that, all right, the Mike Cameron that I know, the story of perseverance, the story of resilience, the story of great success, the story of incredible sort of, like, we could say failures or at least setbacks. And yet here you are today, still at it, still grinding, doing some amazing things in the coaching world and in the work you're doing for men. Where do you want to start? I want to ask the question, what's the Mike Cameron story? Where does it start and how did you end up here?
Yeah, man, it's funny because 12 years ago, I don't know that I would have told you this is where I would end up in the slightest. So I've been an entrepreneur for 30 plus years. I haven't held a job per se since I was, 21. So I've always been an entrepreneur. I had some, as you say, I've had some setbacks in my life. When I was in my 20s, I don't even know if you know this part of the story, but the company I worked for was one of the largest Ponzi schemes in BC history. So I took a bit of a beating there. And then in 2015, my girlfriend was murdered by an ex-boyfriend who subsequently took his own life. And that really set me down this path of, first off, asking the question. I mean, I was the CEO of a fairly significant mortgage brokerage at the time. And, when that happened, I started asking that question, like, why does this matter? Like, what does any of this actually mean? And how do I take this success and turn it into something a little bit more significant? And so at that time, I had lots of folks that wanted me to go after the justice system, which had certainly let her down. And I just thought, asking the question, how do we build a better restraining order, is probably the wrong question to be asking. So I started asking the question, how do we prevent men from getting to that point in the first place? And when I looked at my history in sales and leadership, I've always talked about the impact that emotion has on human behavior. And if you want to sell more widgets, you need to make that emotional connection with your customer. If you want to be a stronger leader, you need that emotional buy-in to your mission, your vision, your values. And when I looked at what happened to Colleen, here was a man that made a decision based on a very temporary emotion that had very permanent consequences. And if you think about men in general, we typically aren't so good at sitting with emotions. And in my career, I learned very early that we buy on emotion and justify it with logic. And I started sort of doing a lot of research to understand that and the neuroscience behind that. And it's very clear that, not only do we buy on emotion, but in fact, we make decisions based on emotion. And as men, if we don't understand the underlying emotion that drive the decisions that we make, we're kind of screwed. So emotions drive decisions, decisions drive behaviors, behaviors drive outcomes. And so often we try and brute force change the behavior, the restraining order, without
Mhm.
actually going back and addressing the emotion that drives the decision that creates the behavior. So in 2019, I sold the business to focus on speaking and working with men in particular to really move the needle in what became men's mental health. And it's funny, I chuckle as I say that because for a long time, I resisted calling what I talked about mental health. And I had a friend of mine phone me up, and uh, there was a community in rural Alberta that had seen a rash of suicide deaths recently. So he would phone me up, and he was a mental health speaker. And he said, "We need to do something for this community. We should do an event." And I said, "Yeah, I'm in. I'm happy to, but like I don't really talk about mental health." And he just looked at me and he said, "Dude, everything you talk about is mental health." And I was like,
That's all you talk about. Yeah.
"Yeah." And I was
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
"Oh, yeah, I guess you're right. I'd never really
Mm.
called it that." And I think that maybe speaks a little bit to the stigma of, because I came at it from a leadership standpoint, from a performance standpoint, and I still do because, I mean, frankly, if I come to you and say, "Hey, do you want to improve your mental health?" You're going to go like, "Yeah, sure, that sounds good." Or if I come to you and say, "Hey, look, do you want to become more emotionally competent so you can perform at your best?" And again, you understand the value of this. I mean, you wrote a book on this, the mental game, right? It's just so important and it's so often neglected, and there's such a crossover when we're talking about performance, mental health, leadership, and just well-being in general. So I've got the business experience that sort of speaks to the performance end. I've had some experience with what happens with poor mental health, and I've learned a few things in my 57 years. So I get excited now to have these kind of conversations and share it. So that's kind of the story and where we're at
Yeah.
today.
No, there's exactly, yeah, and I know there's so much more to it. By the way, this, for anybody who wants a great read and an incredible story, like, it's an incredible story, Becoming a Better Man, When Something's Gotta Change, Maybe It's You. What a great title, by the way. It starts with the man in the mirror kind of a concept, right? It's it's funny because in the work I do in the golf space, I had this conversation last night with a really accomplished player. He plays in the Division I college golf arena, and we were talking about a responsibility mindset and what that
Mm,
means in that performance environment. But seriously, Mike, we could have taken this conversation and put it into any performance environment.
yeah.
This idea that, like, hey, yeah, maybe it's you. Or
Yeah, it
maybe it is. I meaning, like, if I'm asking the question, then maybe it's me, maybe it's me.
maybe it's me. And
Yeah.
that, that came from after Colleen was killed, and I had so many folks surround me, put their hand on my shoulder, and they'd drop their head and they'd shake their head and they'd say, "Something's gotta change, man. Something's gotta change." And, that kind of became my mantra for a while, and it was sort of this hopeless mantra of, "Oh, something's gotta change, man." And then one day I kinda looked in the mirror and I thought, "You know what, Mike? Maybe it's you. Maybe you're the one that needs to change. Maybe you're the one that needs to take responsibility." And I love that word. And I think there's a a confusion sometimes with fault and responsibility. What happened to Colleen 100% was not my fault. There was nothing I could have done to prevent it, but what I did with that experience was 100% my responsibility.
Mhm.
And so looking for how do I take what I've learned over the years and filter that into a message with some meaning, and how do I continue so that her legacy carries on and that we can continue to move the needle when we're talking about creating better men. And again, the book isn't prescriptive. It's just my story and some of the lessons that I've learned along the way, and some of them will resonate and some of them won't. But yeah, it's actually interesting. I mean, you and I have talked lots about books, and eh, I like the title, but the challenge I have with the title is I often get partners that want to gift it, but they feel like, well, if I give my husband a book that's called Becoming a Better Man, it sort of suggests that he's not a good man right now. So I thought, oh, yeah, I didn't really think about that one when I titled the book. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, I've already teed it up to our listeners that you are my publisher and help me publish my book, and I'm so grateful for that. And we're doing some great things, and that's super exciting, and excited about what's to come. For the most important game as well. So super cool. But yeah, the title, man, that's a hard thing, right?
Yeah,
It's like it's almost like today in the Instagram world, right? On these little guys here, it's like, all right, well, what's the hook? You know?
exactly. Yeah, and it's funny because originally I had Redefining Badass as the working title, and it just so happened that I think it's Jen Sincero, she wrote a book called You Are a Badass, and that came out just before my publication, so it was kinda like, shit, I we need to change this." So I couldn't really go with that.
Yeah.
But I kinda regret that now, so I don't know, there may be a re-release or a volume 2. We'll see.
Yeah, that's all easy. Well, right? I can imagine the addition to with the cross out and the new title,
Yes.
or I don't know, some version of that. But um, yeah, so this idea of responsibility mindset, it's hard, right? I mean, maybe said differently, I'd love to get your take on this. Like, it's easy to blame. It's
Yes.
so easy, and it's often so much a part of our default narrative, or our default, chatter, or even just the way we speak.
Mhm.
So, how did like, in your own experiences, and I mean, you had some, like, chronicled, beautifully in the book, but some very high highs that come crashing down. So, like, how do you move past that and take responsibility for your own response, your own emotions, your own emotional management?
Well, I think, the easy part of that for me is the alternative. So being the victim or blaming somebody else is so incredibly disempowering. It means that if it's somebody else's fault, I can't do anything about that. But when I take responsibility, and I think this is just a mindset thing, when I take responsibility, I now have control. I have the power. I can't control what Paul does, but that's fine. I can control what I do in response to what Paul does that's going to give me the best opportunity to be successful, to be happy, to be significant, to create an impact in the world. And so often we become reactive to external factors, external triggers. Like we talk about triggers, right? People get triggered. Well, you can take that one of two ways. I mean, a trigger can be a negative thing because it makes you fly off the handle. Or if you've done the work, a trigger can be a good thing because it makes me recognize that, okay, something's going on here. Like there's something in my nervous system that's responding to something that is happening in the world that Paul's
Mhm.
done, that somebody next to me has done. Taking that pause, slowing down and saying, okay, what is that thing that's coming up inside of me? What would the man I want to be do in response to this? And then do that rather than that amygdala hijack where, we just the fight or flight and we react instantaneously. And often for many of us and myself, regret some of those decisions or responses. So when I take responsibility, it just brings the power back into my control. So there's in my mind, there's no point in debating whether or not it's my responsibility or somebody else's fault because it doesn't matter.
Mhm.
And this comes back to the question I ask often is, do you want to be right or do you want to be effective? Because sometimes you can't be both.
Mhm.
Like you may be right. Maybe it is somebody else's fault. Maybe you are a victim. Maybe well, and again, look at my situation. Like certainly that was somebody else's fault. But what I do with it is my responsibility. And that's the only way that I can move forward.
So
So
it's
yeah.
literally yeah, okay, so it's literally it's almost like the as cold and calculating as this question sounds, it's almost like, well, so what? So
Yeah.
what? What are you gonna do next? I
Yeah.
think that
And
is, like, so empowering,
yeah. And I
your point.
think, there's a caveat or a caution to the so what, because it doesn't mean that we throw away the emotional response because we cannot ignore that. I mean, we can try and ignore that, but it's coming up one way, shape, or form. So I use the acronym SOAR, SOAR. Slow down. So just practice that pause. The O is observe. What's coming up? I'm really angry right now. That's what's coming up. Accept that. None of this, well, I shouldn't be angry. Well, you are. And that's okay. So just accept that and then
Mhm.
reconnect with that version of self that you want to put out in the world. So, who do I want to be? Acknowledging that, okay, I've taken that pause, I've noticed what's coming up, I've accepted what's coming up. Now, reconnecting with how I want to show up in this world. And for me, that allows me the space to have the emotions come up because they're coming, whether you like it or not, they are coming. So you cannot deny them. I mean, you can try, you can suppress, you can bury, you can avoid. And that's what most of us over history have tried to do. But at some point it comes out. Like it's this giant pressure cooker. Like we just stuff them down, stuff them down, stuff them down until poof, everything
Yeah.
explodes. And then we have no control anymore. So denying them is not the answer. So yeah, that's why I put a little bit of a caveat on the so what.
Yeah.
It
Yeah, it's a great no, that's a great point. It's not to diminish the thing and its impact on our psyche, right?
yeah, well,
So
and again, that emotional response or the emotional reaction is not in your control.
so that's
And
primal, right? In a
right,
way.
and that emotion comes, physically. I talk about sort of like the body, the heart, and the mind, right? That first instinct, that first reaction, you're going to notice it physically. Angry, like is my jaw tensed, my fists are clenched, I've got this pit in my stomach.
Right.
Then what's the emotion that is? Okay, so that's anger, and then we throw it up to the head. But for most men that I see and I work with, and frankly, I've been this way as well, is we try and address things the opposite way. We try and start with the head, rationalize the emotion, and then push it down to the body. And that's not how it works. So, and it's so funny, like most men when I ask them, how are you feeling? Or how does that feel if they describe an incident? When I ask them how they feel, 99% of the time they'll respond with, well, I think that blah, 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 blah. And they'll go back into the story. I'm like,
Mm.
okay, no, that's wonderful. But how does that make you feel? Well, she shouldn't have done that. Or this shouldn't have happened. Or they should have put X, Y, and Z in place to prevent it. It's like, okay, so that again, that's the story. How does that make you feel? Because none of those things actually happened. This is what the incident was. How does it make you feel? And most are not very good at articulating that. And Dr. Lisa Feldman Barrett, who's a researcher, she talks about emotional granularity, the ability to identify at a very granular level what the emotion is and the control that gives us. So again, oversimplified, but when I can identify the emotion, when I can label it, that allows me to sort of kick it back up here. Now I can work with it
Mm.
rationally. So that's part of that slow down and observe piece.
Yeah. Inside of that observe is the acknowledgement inside of that as well. In other words, this idea, and I've read some research, and I actually teach this to my clients too in the golf space. Like we used to sort of like, to your point, suppress or sort of push away the negative emotions and not want to have any part of them. But it
Mhm.
seems like there's value in an internal dialogue that's willing to say, "Whew, that was frustrating," or "Man, I'm nervous about this putt," or right? And once we do that,
Yeah.
it immediately begins to lower the intensity of that experience for us. Is that
Absolutely.
inside of
So
that?
I
Okay.
think it was Dan Goleman, who talks about name it to tame it,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
just, yeah, identifying what that emotion is will start to dissipate it right away rather than trying to push it aside. I mean, use the term negative emotion. I mean, the reality is emotions are just information. Like, so that nervous piece, okay, I'm nervous about that putt. Whew, okay, that's information. So that just means what do I need? Maybe I
Mhm.
just need to slow down a little bit and I just need to relax and I just need to accept that I've made 10,000 putts before. This is 10,001. I need to trust the process.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
obviously, not all of them are going to go in the hole, but as you well know, my best opportunity for it to go in the hole is not when I'm dwelling on the anxiety or the nervousness. It's when I can just relax and just be me.
How much do you consider, talk about when you're working with your clients, this idea that this model where we have multiple essences, if you will, in our brain? Like I think I've used that before, where it's like, self one, self two, right? Self one
Yes.
is the controlling, egoistic part of you that's sort of always watching for the threats and so forth, and jumping into action when it feels like it needs to. But then there's the your authentic self, your true essence, like you at your best. And I'm curious if that's at all part of how you, approach this and work through some of these.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, that's internal family systems is from a psychology standpoint. They talk about IFS, internal family systems. There's a fellow, I can't remember his name. He wrote a book called No Bad Parts and talks about embracing all of the parts of us, the parts that beat the crap out of ourselves because we missed that putt. Like rather than again trying to push that part away,
Yeah.
just accepting that part, embracing that part, giving that part a hug, welcoming it. What do you need? What are you trying to protect me from? That's one of my favorite questions once we're sort of into it with a guy is what is that keeping you safe from? Because there was probably a time and a place where you needed that little guy to be chirping in your ear telling you that, you can't do that because maybe you couldn't and maybe you needed that to keep you safe. And I see that a lot. There's the sort of childhood, the inner child that's still up here chirping away that maybe when you were 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, you needed that voice to keep you safe. Now you're an adult, you probably don't need that voice. So just doing some experiments around asking that little voice, "What do you need? What do you need right now?" Um,
Yeah, it's
you know
almost like the internal coaching that we all can develop and bring along with us anywhere we go, our own internal coach
mhm.
that can
Yeah.
help us through those moments through just some simple questioning.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. That internal dialogue, the questions we ask, "What do you need? What are you keeping me safe from?" And you know what? I've got this. I don't need you right now. I see you. You're good, but I don't
Yeah.
need you right now.
What are you keeping me safe from? That like it really turns that thing that you are afraid of, it really turns it into dust. I mean, right?
Mhm.
In most cases, right?
Yeah, it really does. It really does. Because once you realize that, and again, all of the parts are trying to protect you from something. So, what is that? And is it real? Is it not? Maybe it's not. It probably isn't. It's probably some legacy of a thing from, again, we've all got some traumas, big trauma, big T traumas, little T traumas. There are things that we react to, that we respond to, and understanding those allows us to just recognize them and move with them. It was interesting. So Michelle and I, my partner now, we've been together almost 9 years. And for me, one of my triggers early, so when Colleen was murdered, she had left my house in the morning. Um, and then that was the last I heard from her, but I'd send her a text in the morning and no response, another text, no response. And, as the day went on and sort of my anxiety escalated, and then I finally got the phone call and the RCMP, the police came and found me and shared that story with me. So when Michelle and I started dating, if she didn't respond promptly to a text, like my anxiety level just went through the roof.
Mhm.
So having that conversation with her and explaining to her that this is a bit of a trigger for me, so I would appreciate it, like, if you could do your best to just acknowledge. And we had a little unicorn. We used the unicorn emoji if we were tied up and couldn't actually respond because we said we were each other's unicorn. So we came up with some language around that. But the interesting piece with that, she also came out of a very controlling, abusive relationship. So when she heard me say, "I need you to respond to my texts in a timely manner," that was a bit of a trigger for her because it felt controlling.
Oh, geez.
Right?
Yeah, of
So then
course. Of course.
we had to navigate that and just recognize that. But once you recognize each other's, raw spots, Sue Johnson, wrote a book called Hold Me Tight on relationships, which is a great book on relationships. And she talks about raw spots. So understanding each other's raw spots.
That is huge. It reminds me of there's a bit that, comedian, I think it's John Mulaney. Yeah, I think I
Mm.
have that right. Used to write for Saturday Night Live
Yeah.
and alright. Um, but he does this bit where he's talking about as growing up, I think he was, like, tall and gangly and he said, I would walk like a woman." He's like, "That was me growing up," you know? And um, he describes walking down the street one day, and on the other side of the street, there's like 4 13-year-old boys, you know? And he's like, "They're the meanest people on the planet," 13-year-old boys, right? And because he says, like, one of them turns and shouts, "Hey, you walk like a girl," right? And I think the story goes like he shouts back at them, like, that's the one thing I'm sensitive about, that's his raw spot.
Yes.
But I think it's such a good point because if we know what our sensitivities are and we're willing enough to show them to others, man, there's that vulnerability
Yeah.
that is often talked about that just it makes everything settle in intensity and allows that connection to happen at a higher level.
Yeah, like the connection piece is so powerful because imagine if Michelle and I had not had that conversation and I come to her and I say, I need you to respond quickly to my texts.
Yeah.
And she says, fuck you. Like you're not controlling me. And then I'm
Yeah.
like, well, what are you talking about? I need, right? So then it just escalates. But when we come at it from a place of understanding, she has some empathy for why I feel the way I do about that. And I have lots of empathy for why she feels the way she does. And together we navigate that and we can just have that conversation, and coming up with that common language is really powerful. Just being able to say, you know what, you touched a bit of a raw spot. It's like, okay, perfect. Let me just back off a little bit and let's talk it through. What do you need right now?
This idea of vulnerability, obviously, in the last 10 years or so, brought to maybe to the lexicon in a lot more prominent way through the work of Brene Brown.
Yes.
I'm curious, as you do the work that you do with men, um, I sort of have a take on vulnerability, but I'm curious, like, how willing are the men that you work with, um, and open are they to this concept of vulnerability?
I think there's a lot of reluctance still. There's a lot of hesitation. There's a lot of skepticism that if I show my vulnerability, if I show my quote unquote weakness, I'm going to get destroyed. But what happens is if we create the correct space, and as a coach, you know this, when you create the space and environment where you can set the table. And for me, I mean, the advantage I've got is when I share my story and I share some of what I've been through, that really sets the vulnerability table and allows guys to feel like, whew, all right, if he can share that piece, then maybe that's okay. Maybe I can share my piece. And so when we get, and I run a number of men's groups as well. And so when you get a group of guys together, the ripple effect is unbelievable. Like it's just, there's a magic that happens when men come together with intention. And so as soon as one guy shares, the rest of the guys start to like, oh shit, I thought I was the only one. I thought I was alone. And there's this comfort in understanding that, wow, you know what? Paul has some of the same insecurities that I do. He's got some of the same worries that I do. He struggles with some of the same things I do. I mean, the context may be different, but the underlying struggle is really the same. And really they are the same. And so there is a real power that comes with that. So yes, definitely there's some skepticism and hesitation, but that's where, again, it's about creating the environment, creating the container where we can have these conversations and we can show men this is what it's like to show up. And without fail, they talk about the weight that gets lifted, right? That armor that we carry, the masks that we don, like those things are freaking heavy. And so when you find a place where you can actually drop that armor, drop those masks, it's so much lighter. And for me, leaning into my emotional self, it just makes life so much richer. Um, it's the difference between living in black and white and 4K color. So everything,
Yeah.
every experience is just enhanced. Um, the amount of presence to a moment is enhanced, and I don't always get it right, but that's part of the practice. And so just finding little ways to practice that, whether it's, I'm out on a run and just noticing this two squirrels circling the tree, chasing each other, um, and taking in the beauty of the Rockies. So that's,
Mhm.
for me, I'm a trail runner. Like I go on stupid long distance runs and
We're gonna
just
talk about that, by the way.
just taking in the environment. I was up, I got to run from my house up to it's a place called Wind Ridge. And it was just absolutely stunning. And when I got to the summit, I just stood there and paused for a minute to just admire and take in and feel the gratitude for actually being able to be in this space, that this is my backyard. And I literally ran from home to this place that people travel from all over the world to come see.
Sure.
And yeah, it's so easy to take. I mean, that's a pretty big thing, but even the little things, it was cool. My son went and spent a semester in Spain. He did a side trip to Morocco, and I asked him, "So what did you think? Like, was that a life-changing experience?" He says, "Well, I tell you what, it gives me a whole new appreciation for living in Canada." And, I mean, there's just there's not a grocery store on every corner. The food, he said, I had to try not to think about where the food came from because, they've got sides of beef hanging in the hot sun that they're just cutting slabs off. And then, you know,
Yes.
right. Like it's just different. So
It's
all the
different.
things we
Yeah.
take for granted.
You've no doubt seen the recent, uh, social media blitz, or almost, I don't know what you'd call it, but, trend, if you will, for the Europeans that have come to the States, to North America to see the World Cup. As
Mm,
we record this, it's, week 1 essentially of the World Cup, and because I'm on Instagram a little bit and I'm in that space, I'm seeing just all these crazy videos of these Europeans coming to America and Canada for the first time, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, this is unbelievable." It's so different, the
yeah.
vastness of it. Yeah, the Rockies, like, they have, it's incredible.
Yeah, we had a guest, a friend from Germany come over a couple of weeks ago, and, yeah, she was just in awe. And we got to see elk, we got to see mountain sheep. Yeah, she was very fortunate. We got to see lots of wildlife while she was out here, and, yeah, just taking it all in with gratitude it's pretty incredible.
So I wanna talk about the long distance running. I wanna talk about the Mike Cameron that does hard things. So I wanna talk about how you got into doing things like the ultramarathoning type adventures and all the adventure stuff that you do. And then I wanna and I'm curious, like, how it helps you personally and how it helps you in the work that you're doing.
Yeah, so for me, it became a bit of a when I was going through my divorce, um, back in that was 2012 now, I just needed an outlet, so I turned to fitness. The kids were 10 and 12, so they were a little older, so I had a little bit more time and freedom to actually get out, so I turned to triathlon, so I did an Ironman in 2013, continued to do triathlon for a few years, but then it was just too much time training for all 3 sports, and I had a buddy that was a trail runner, so I remember asking him. He was doing the Squamish, 50 miler, which is a substantial amount of elevation in the mountains, and I said, "Do you think I could do that?" And he just looked at me, he said, "Dude, it's all mindset." He said, "100% you could do that." So I went and did
Interesting.
that, and I fell in love with the community and continued on. I did a 100 miler. Last year, I did my first 200 miler. down in Tahoe. Actually, it was around Lake Tahoe. It's the Tahoe 200,
I
which, by
remember
the
when you
way,
did that. That's
is two.
insane.
It's not 200. It's 215. They lie.
Is that like a metric conversion thing? What's going on there? I don't know.
No, that's a trail run or an ultra thing. Because 50 miles, it's always 50 miles ish. 200 miles ish. Might be 197. Might be 240. Who knows?
So the ultra marathoning community we now know gets a little cheeky with their distances.
Yes,
Nice.
a little bit. But
So
yeah.
215, like what? So you get to 200, you're like, oh, are you kidding? I still got 15?
Well, and so I've done it.
More than
I've
a half
raced
marathon.
enough that I know that 200 doesn't mean 200. So that doesn't phase me anymore, but it's fun when you get somebody out there that hasn't been out before. I mean, usually on the shorter distances, and they're like looking at their watch. Well, this is a 50K race. I'm at 50.7. Why is this not done yet? Like, well, welcome to the ultra world, because it may be 50, it may be 60, who knows? Maybe 42. Today it's 57. So just keep going.
What was the hardest part about doing that first race? Was the 50 miler the first?
No, the first day it was a 30 miler.
Okay.
Um, so the hardest part of that, I think, was just getting to the start line. So just making the decision to do it. And then again, it's that shift of mindset. So it's rather than, I'm running for a couple of hours or I have a target time in mind. When I was running road marathons, I had a target time because, road running, you can be pretty consistent with your pace. Trail running, not so much, because sometimes it's flat, sometimes it's straight up a mountain,
Yeah.
sometimes it's straight down a mountain, and even straight down a mountain isn't all that fast. So I just had to shift my mindset to I'm running all day. And literally that was my mantra. I'm running all day. I'm running all day. I'm running all day. Because when you get to a point in your head where like, is this over yet? It's like, nope, I'm running all day. I'm running all day. That's the ticket, Mike. You're just put your head down and just keep running
Nice.
until somebody tells you you're done running. So you just kind of
That
keep
is so
going.
good. That's like you've planted the seed. It's like, hey,
Yeah, and it
we're
was
going.
a really big mindset shift from the road running where, again, if I'm running a 10K or a half marathon or a marathon, I've
Mhm.
got some time goals. And so that can get frustrating if you're not meeting your time goals. Whereas in an ultra, I mean, I have time goals for sure, but there's so many more factors that you don't have control over. So again, it comes back to that. And you asked me why I do this and how it applies. So for me, that is exactly it. There are so many variables that I don't have control over: the weather, the race organizers, do they have water on course? Is the food good? Does the food sit with my stomach? Is it a wet course? So do my feet get wet and I end up with trench foot as I did on the first 100 miler I ever did? And what do I do with that? So it's practicing controlled adversity. So I know, like, even in the Tahoe 200, I've got a GPS on me. If something really goes sideways, I know they're probably going to send a helicopter in to bail me out. Might cost me a lot
Mhm.
of money, but
Eh,
but I but I can get out of that. So it's adversity, but there's some element of control to it, but it allows me to practice that in those moments that I have some control over,
yeah.
so that when those moments that I have no control over, my girlfriend is murdered, that I'm better prepared to navigate those type of situations. So that's really where the payoff is. It's the practice. And for me, shifting my mindset or language from trying to practicing has been massive. So rather than try a thing, well, Mike suggested doing this. So I tried it, didn't work for me. Okay, well, what if you practice? Well, golf. I tried golf. I sucked. I hated it. Well, what if you practiced golf instead of trying golf? You know that every time you go out, you're going to get just a little bit better. You're going to pick up a skill, a mindset, a shift, something.
Hmm.
So, we touched on it earlier, the vocabulary, the inner dialogue that we
Mm.
have. Oh, I tried that, it sucks. Well, I practiced that. I didn't do all that well this time. Next time I'll do it better, or I'll take that lesson. And again, for me in the ultra community, you know, so my Sinister Seven was my kind of nemesis for a few years. That was my first 100 miler. First year I ran, I got trench foot halfway up leg 6. There's 7 legs, so I was about, I don't know, let's say 90 miles in to a 100-mile race, and my feet split open, and I was devastated.
That seems like an issue.
Yeah, it was a massive issue. Like, imagine being in a bathtub for 24 hours, how your feet get all mushy and macerated, and then
Yeah.
running on that. So they split open. So that's trench foot essentially. So I phoned up Michelle from the top of leg 6, and I was in tears. I had 30 hours to finish that race. And I said, there's no way I'm making that 30-hour cutoff, but I had to be into the next checkpoint, I think in 2 hours. I said, so new plan, you're going to get me into that next checkpoint. You're going to bandage my feet. You're going to get me back out, and I'm going to finish this race because I did not come here to run 92 miles and get
Yeah.
pulled off course.
Right.
So I
Right.
ended up making that last cutoff with 9 minutes to spare. I finished the race, but I was an hour and 56 minutes over time limit. Next year I came back. We learned. I took care of my
Yeah.
feet. Every aid
Right.
station, I took off my socks, I dried my feet. But conditions were incredibly wet. I wasn't as well physically conditioned. I
On
pulled
the
the
first
plug out
one.
as the first one.
Yeah. Yeah.
I pulled the plug after leg 5 on that
Oh,
second
on the second one.
attempt.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay.
Third attempt, I went back. I was well conditioned. We took care of my feet. I was halfway up leg 6, same spot as the trench foot manifested, and my stomach blew up, and I just couldn't keep anything down. So I missed that cutoff on that last checkpoint. So then I went back again. The next year, I thought, you know what? I just need a win. So I did the 50 miler instead of the 100 miler, and I crushed that, did really well. And then 2024, I went back to do the 100 miler again. We took care of my feet. We dialed in my fitness level. We dialed in my nutrition. And I remember I was again at both that same spot, and my stomach was starting to go sideways. It's coming out both ends. And I texted Michelle and said, "Oh, I'm in trouble." And she says, for anybody that knows ultras, they'll get what I'm talking about. Her text back to me was priceless. She says, "If Courtney Dauwalter can shit her pants and keep running, so can you. Keep going." And it was just like, fine, fine. So I finished that one in 29 hours. So an hour under the cutoff. But
Wow.
it took me, I mean, 5 years on the course, 4 attempts at that 100 miler to get there. And every time I learned a little bit, and I took all of the lessons from the failures before and built on those. And then ultimately last year I did Tahoe, which again was the culmination
There we go.
of
Right.
all of that. Yeah, that was the Tahoe finish line. That's
There we
exactly it.
go. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I was
Something visceral
screaming
just
coming
happened
across
there.
that
That's
finish
awesome.
line. Yeah, it was so good. Michelle met me about 500 yards up the trail to give me the Canadian flag, and ran across the finish line. And yeah, that was an incredible event. It was very well organized. The food was incredible. It was so well done.
Well, it's amazing, like, all the metaphors. One of the reasons why, I asked the question is 'cause I said, "Okay, well, how does it help you and personally and with your clients?" And, I mean, you've already talked about this idea. It's just reshaping your paradigms, your mental model on how the world works. And I think anybody that's listening, we can all learn from this idea that, um, skill development is not linear. Skill development takes a long time. We must lean in and commit to crossing the finish line. Setbacks will happen. Sometimes we won't get to cross the finish line.
Mm-hmm.
But the key is not the event that happens, it's how you respond to that.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to prepare differently next year. I'm going to learn from that. In the golf world, I say, this is the question I ask my clients right now, Mike. I say, what did the game teach you today?
Yes.
Like I used to
Yeah.
ask, hey, what was your score? How did you shoot today? It's irrelevant.
Yeah.
And you've
Yeah.
taken such a long view of this trail running, marathon, ultra marathon. It's all under the doing hard things rubric, right?
Yes. Well, and you're right. Like it's what are the lessons that we learn? And one of the other lessons, like at Tahoe, so it was 2:00 in the morning, it's pitch black, and all of a sudden my watch starts beeping and I look and it says I'm off course. Because I've got the maps loaded on here and I thought, okay, well, that's really odd because I'm on the Tahoe Rim Trail. So, like, there's a trail, but it's telling me I'm off course. So I pull up my phone to look at the better map, and sure enough, it says I'm off course. So I start following the GPS, and now I'm like really off trail. And all of a sudden, I look around, my headlight's flickering, and it's not very strong. And now I can't find the actual trail. I'm in the middle
Oh,
of the bush
no.
and I start to panic.
Yeah.
So then I send Michelle a text. Again, it's 2:00 in the morning. I assume she's probably asleep because she wasn't going to meet me at the next aid station until.
She wasn't down at the bingo parlor.
No. So I sent her a text, and just that act of reaching out for connection just allowed me to go. And fortunately, she was awake or she had her notifications on, and she sent me back a text and she just said, "What do you need?" And in that moment, it was like, okay, actually, I don't need anything. It's not that big a deal. I cannot have gone more than a couple hundred yards off trail. I'm just going to stand here. I'm going to wait until I see another headlamp coming through the night because there will be another runner coming.
Yeah.
And again, it was just reaching out for that connection. And I use that as the metaphor, right? Like, who do you reach out to when you're lost and alone in the dark at 2 a.m.? And sometimes, again, I didn't need her to solve anything for me. I mean, frankly, she couldn't have solved anything for me. I just needed to know that I was connected to something. So I waited. Another runner came by. I yelled out. I said, "Hey, I'm off trail." And there was two of them. They stopped and they kind of yelled back, "No, we're good." And I'm like, no. I'm off trail. Can you just stand there for a minute so that I can make my way back to your headlamp? And sure enough, like I said, I was maybe a couple hundred yards off trail. But then they looked at their maps and they're like, "Oh, it does say we're off trail." So clearly there was a glitch in the map that the racer had provided. But again, we're on the Tahoe Rim Trail. So we just looked, he's just like, there really is nowhere else to go. So we'll just follow the trail. And sure enough, eventually, the map said, "Okay, yeah, you're good. You're back on trail again." But yeah, so all of those little pieces along the way, I mean, those experiences, you don't get other places.
No, that's right. I think that this idea that we don't need more information, we need more insights. Like insights are the things that allow us to develop skills, grow as a human, as a dad, as a husband, as a teammate or whatever. This idea of connection, by the way, connection is the variable that changes everything. Talk about the work you're doing in that connection space and what it means for people that you're working with.
Yeah. So in the corporate context, I mean, and again, especially now that we're talking about so much AI, artificial intelligence, the folks that win aren't going to be the ones that optimize for results. They're going to be the ones that optimize for connection, because as we go more and more down this artificial road, people are looking more and more for authentic connection. So I use, I talk about connection to self, connection to others, and connection to the world around you. I talk about the difference between functional connection and what I would call emotional connection. So, functional connection, I think back to when I was CEO and I had little kids. I was at home for almost all of their sporting events, their dance recitals, all of the things. I was functionally connected, but oftentimes my head was still back in the boardroom. I was thinking about payroll the next week. I was thinking about whatever. So I was functionally connected to my family, but I was not emotionally connected. I was there, but I wasn't there.
Mm.
I had proximity. I did not have presence. So shifting from proximity to presence is incredibly powerful. And from an organizational standpoint, it is about finding ways to create connection internally. Like if we look at the Gallup study on the state of the workforce, I think right now we're down to like 23% of the workforce is what they would call engaged.
Yeah, the engagement studies. Yeah.
Yeah. So, there's such a massive return on investment for creating cultures of connection. And for men in particular, if we talk about the loneliness epidemic, we talk about death by suicide, men are dying at 4 times much as our female counterparts. And it's this emotional disconnection from self, from others, and from the world
Mm.
that leads to isolation. Dr. John Olaf from the University of British Columbia, he's a psychiatrist, a researcher. He talks about the 3 I's: injury, internalization, and isolation. And for many men, when there's an injury, we look inward for a solution. And when we can't find it, we isolate. So we actually disconnect even further.
We haven't, yeah, we're not solving for it. We're just sort of moving away from it and not letting others see it.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. And,
Yeah,
you know, as a result, that ends up often in tragic circumstances.
no doubt, no doubt. That's awesome. I love that concept both for the organizational work that you're doing as well as its meaning for individuals
Mhm.
and in the lives that we lead as men. I think it's huge. Um, Mike, this has been great. I've really enjoyed the conversation. Always appreciated the work we've done together, trying to sell a few books together.
Yes.
And
Well,
we'll
I
continue to do
appreciate
that.
you plugging my book because I always forget that part.
Yeah, I know. We can't forget that, right? Becoming a better man. We'll put a link in the down below for everybody to see. But your story is an amazing story, and your tenacity and your resilience is just super inspiring. So to have an opportunity to do this and hear more depth and color to your experiences and like how you're using it, like I really appreciate how articulate you are about like what this means for all of us
Mm.
and the research behind it. And anyway, that's you don't need me to tell you that, but I just
No,
appreciate it and appreciate
I
you.
I
So
always appreciate hearing that. I like to know what lands, what resonates. Um, yeah, and again, it's about creating the stories in your life and finding those experiences. And to that end, the reason I asked you if we could do it a little early, I have to go pick up my paragliding wing today. So my Michelle and I are learning to paraglide. So I'm buying a paragliding wing today, and then we're going out to the mountains. I think next week to do our high fly test. So
absolutely amazing. I know you had mentioned that a couple of weeks ago, and I'm super excited for you. I will say I just ended a 10-year relationship with my own paraglider.
oh yeah,
Uh, so I did, I bought a powered paraglider 10 years ago, actually 11 years ago. And it just so happened that up here in Ohio, because of the weather's not been great the last couple of years and some other commitments, I decided, you know what, I'm going to let somebody else experienced this, and so I sold it like 3 days ago. So funny
Oh,
thing.
wow.
Um, but um, but yeah, it's an amazing experience, powered they're very different experiences, by the way.
Yeah,
Um,
I would imagine.
soaring on the uplifts, I mean, that to me is just so cool. And being where you are, you have all of the right ingredients for the kind of air that keeps you aloft forever,
Yes.
right? That is so cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's been really neat learning experience because when we first started, I kind of thought you jump off a mountain, you float down, but as you well know, that's not really the case. You actually pilot these things. You actually fly them, which is really cool.
It's super cool. I don't know if you've ever been out to Southern California near San Diego in La Jolla. There's kind of a famous spot where the cliff is about 300 feet high, and it's in Torrey Pines. It's right in the Torrey
Yep.
Pines Park area, and the Torrey Pines Glider Park is kind of the spot. And these uh, paragliders basically jump off the cliff because what happens is if this is the cliff, the air moves, it goes up. Now they've got this ridge line of
Yep.
air
So
that
you get
they
the
can go
ridge
back and
soaring.
forth. Yeah. So super cool. And I actually did that a couple years ago. And just because you know, I love being up there and it's kind
Yeah.
of cool. So you guys will have a great experience. So go get that paraglider. And we'll continue to sell some books together. I'll see if I can sell some of these for you. So
I appreciate that.
Becoming a Better Man. Go out there and buy this book. It's a great story. Mike Cameron, thanks for being with me.
Thanks, Paul. I appreciate it.
Yeah, we'll talk soon.
You bet.
All right, that's a wrap on this episode. Mike Cameron, brilliant guy, once again, author of this book, Becoming a Better Man. This stuff that Mike's doing, this really difficult trail running and ultra marathon stuff, it's crazy and it is very much mental. Was having a conversation the other day about these kinds of things and like the value of doing hard things and how it can actually shift our paradigm on how the world is supposed to work. Like we all think it's supposed to work one way, and when it doesn't, we get all upset and we go, we sort of get taken sideways. But if we really understand that there's a lot of things we can control, many things we can't, I think it begins to change and help us shift in important ways and lead ourselves and inspire others. So very inspiring. Mike, thank you so much. Hey, listen, if you like this, go ahead and smash the like button, subscribe, tell everybody you know about this. And we look forward to seeing you on the next episode. See ya.